Orthodoxu. Dimitra is a long-time co-worker with me on this project, which we also developed marine litter database in the last month of the project by the beginning of 2017. And she is also, let's say, monitoring all these, let's say, data collected and uploaded onto the system. She is a senior researcher and analyst at ACTI. And I would like to give the floor to Dimitra. So Dimitra, the floor is yours.
Good morning. Thank you, Serdar, for that introduction, and thank you all for joining us today to hear about our project and specifically about the data that we've collected through the cleanups that we've been doing over the years. As Serdar has said, the project, MarLitCy project, is actually a continuation of a previous project that started back in 2014. The Marine Litter Together for Clean Seas project, for Clean Coast, sorry. Okay. And one of the key aims of the project is to raise awareness in key target groups. And we're doing that through all the activities that Serdar had previously mentioned, but a key activity to do that is marine litter. And we've been doing both beach and seabed cleanups over the years. And at each of the cleanups, we try to involve as many people as possible and as many target groups as possible. And that includes youth, children and youth. It includes businesses, big organizations that operate on the island. It also includes divers and fishermen. And we want everyone to see the extent of marine litter on our island, and to understand its sources more, for example, and to get actively involved in the issue, because we think that people learn and understand by doing, not simply by being talked to. So over the duration of the two projects, we've done 29 beach cleanups on 23 locations, different locations. Sorry, I'm having some trouble with the screen. There. These are some of the locations of the beach cleanups. As you can see, there's some locations where we've done cleanups twice over the years. Some we've done them even more times. And we've also done 6 seabed cleanups on these 6 sites that you can see on this slide. And we've been doing cleanups around the island of Cyprus as far as possible, wherever we can actually reach, and we have volunteers joining us. And this map sort of pinpoints the locations of the cleanups. As you can see, we've done a lot more beach cleanups. As I've already told you, these are the green points on the map, than seabed cleanups, so they're the blue points. And that's for obvious reason, because it's easier for us to involve volunteers and especially children and youth on these beach cleanups. And when we do seabed cleanups, we need to have the active involvement of our divers. Sometimes we need fishermen or local authorities to support us with taking out the litter from that's collected from the seabed. So those are logistically a little bit more difficult. Try to forward. Okay. When we started doing the project, actually even planning the project, we realized that there weren't a lot of data available on marine litter in Cyprus, and the data that were available were scarce. They weren't comparable between them. So we made a very conscious decision that whenever we would do cleanups, we would do so in a structured way, using a specific methodology, because we wanted to make data available for anyone, and for us as well, because when you don't have data, you don't have specific data, you rely on sort of anecdotal stories of what's on the seabed or on beaches. So how can you take concerted actions and specific actions to address marine litter if you don't really know what this marine litter is made out of? So we wanted to make sure that we would be doing waste characterizations during our cleanups and source identifications. And so we started looking into available protocols that we could implement, and we agreed to use the Ocean Conservancy Protocol, and this was done for a series of reasons, really. I don't know if how many of you are aware of the Ocean Conservancy, but it's an NGO that's based in the US, but it has an international coverage because they have partners in over 100 countries. And this organization has been organizing beach cleanups for at least 20, 30 years now. And every year they issue a report with the data collected from each country. So we thought it would be very important to have data from Cyprus in there as well. And we wanted to be able to have data that's comparable with data from other countries. That was one of the reasons why we chose the Ocean Conservancy. The second reason was because the protocol is fairly easy to use. It's one page, like you see in this picture. And because we wanted to actively involve children in our campaigns, we needed an easy to use protocol. And we've actually studied it quite a lot, and it covers the main items we found on the beach anyway, and it gives you also the flexibility to add additional items if you find any. So once we started collecting the data, we wanted to be able to share it with anyone interested in using it. So we started the marine litter database, which is available on the project's website, marlitcy.eu. It's freely accessible. Anyone can download or access or process the data however they want for any purpose, really. And so in doing so, we feel like we've filled a very important gap. So I'm gonna go through some of the analysis of the data we collected. And firstly, we'll look at the types of waste that we find on beach cleanups, during beach cleanups. Just by looking at this graph, you can see that the two most important types of waste are cigarette butts and plastic waste. Usually, when you see data on waste, marine litter, you see plastic waste usually includes cigarette butts. But in Cyprus, and not only in Cyprus, in the Mediterranean actually, cigarette butts are a huge proportion of the waste that we find. If you see at the numbers in the brackets next to the figure, we collected almost 11,000 pieces of cigarette butts. That's a huge number. Similarly, around 11,000 pieces of plastic waste. Then we had also other categories of waste. We had some metal, we had some glass waste, and we have some other smaller categories. But cigarette butts and plastic waste, if you put them together, because both can be categorized as plastic actually, because cigarette filters are made out of plastic fibers, it's about 85% of the marine litter we find on our coasts. Now, if we take a closer look at the plastic, just excluding the cigarette butts now that we know it's a huge percentage, you'll see that we have bottle caps and stoppers. We have drink bottles, straws, candy wrappers, cups and plates. And then we also have about 30% of non-identifiable plastic fragments, either smaller than 2.5 centimeters or bigger than 2.5 centimeters. That's 20%, sorry. Now, what does this mean? This means that these were plastic pieces that we couldn't categorize as anything else. We don't know where they came from. And this is not uncommon because we know that plastic in the marine environment keeps breaking down into smaller pieces until it becomes microplastics, tiny pieces that sometimes we can't even see with the naked eye. And these end up in the food chain. So these are a huge concern for scientists, and this is where a lot of efforts are actually being put now to address these microplastics. The reason why I wanted you to remember these categories, bottle caps and stoppers, drink bottles, cups and plates, is because we're going to come back to them in the end and see how these can be addressed or are being addressed at the moment. Then if we look at the waste, the metal waste that we find on our beaches, you see that you find cans and pieces of them or their handles, and metal caps and crown bottle caps, and some aluminum foil. We find quite a bit of aluminum foil actually. Now, when it comes to seabed cleanups, Again, plastic waste is the biggest percentage. That's not surprising. We know that plastic waste is in general the biggest percentage of waste, any type of cleanup really. But we don't find cigarette butts, for example, which again, not surprising because most of smoking happens on the coast. Metal waste and clothing. We find quite a bit of clothing on the seabed as well. Now, if we take the plastic waste on the seabed and analyze it a little bit further, again, we have drink bottles are a big percentage, but we also find some new sort of items that we don't really find so many on coast, which is fishing lines, pieces of fishing nets, ropes, cords, and so on. Now, we wanted to also see what are the main sources of marine litter. As I said, we try to do a source identification exercise every time we do cleanups. So we've split the types of litters into their presumed source. So we have smoking-related litter, smoking-related litter like cigarette butts, lighters, cigar tips, anything like that. Recreational, where we included all types of litter that is found or can be placed on the beach or left on the beach by beach users. So food wrappers, plastic containers, any metal caps, tins, glass bottles, clothing, toys, and so on. Fishing related and farming and aquaculture related litter, medical, and then anything other that we couldn't categorize. And again, as expected, smoking related litter is what we find mostly, followed by recreational litter. And this is this shows very, very clearly that what is left on a beach is actually land-based. It's what's left by people on land. It doesn't really come from the sea, as we often say. The fishing industry, the shipping industry might be responsible for some of the marine litter that we find in Cyprus, but it's mostly land-based sources. And similarly, from the seabed, it's recreational activities. And then here we have a larger percentage of the fishing-related litter as well. So some facts over the duration or over the period of cleanups that we've done so far. We've had 640 people involved, volunteers. We filled about 150 big trash bags. At least half a ton of waste was collected, and 25,000 pieces of waste. Now, if you look at the stretch of the beaches that we clean, that's not huge. We're not talking about 50 kilometers of beach. We're talking about a few kilometers maybe. So 25,000 pieces of litter is a very, very big number. And we found some very peculiar waste items over the period of time. So a barbecue grill and a Christmas tree were included among those. Recently, during the COVID pandemic, as you know, we were in lockdown in Cyprus, so people weren't moving at all. So when the lockdown started to ease and we were able to take short trips to the coast, we did 3 cleanups on beaches that we clean annually. And there was a huge difference if we compared the results from the cleanups that we did post-COVID or during the COVID lockdowns and the year before or the months before. We had 77% less items by number, 87% fewer cigarette butts, 79% less plastic waste, and 100% increase in hygienic and medical waste. Now, the numbers for hygienic and medical waste are not huge anyway, what we used to find before, but this increase shows sort of like a trend, and I'm sure we've all noticed it just walking down the street, how many gloves and masks we find, and what's on the street will end up on a post somewhere, undoubtedly. And I wanted to finish with this slide, basically, the way forward. As I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation of the data, some of the most common items that we find are straws, are cutlery, plates, and so on. Now, the EU last year announced the Single-Use Plastics Directive that will come into effect by the 3rd of July in 2021, so in little less of in a year, about a year. And it will put some bans on restrictions on some of the most commonly found marine litter items around Europe. And specifically straws, plastic straws, plates, and cutlery will be completely banned. cotton swab sticks like Q-tips will be banned as well as balloon sticks. Drink bottles, there are some restrictions with regards to how they can be designed so that their caps do not come off and do not become marine litter. They will have to remain attached. And there are some very, very strict targets with regards to their recycling. For example, by 2029, about 90% of all drink bottles will have to be collected for recycling. Those are very, very ambitious targets, but all of these targets show the extent of the problem at the EU. For an EU directive to come into place just to address the most common marine litter items, then I think we should really be concerned. That's all for our cleanups. If you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to take them. Thank you very much.
Just a moment, Serdar. Sorry.
Thanks very much for sharing your presentation, Dimitra. It was very impressive and very useful, I believe. Now the floor is Özge Özdens. She is from the research team of Exeter University at Nearest University. And she's a professor at Nearest University, and her expertise on ecology and biodiversity. So we would like to hear her presentation as well with big curiosity. So the floor is yours, Özge. Thanks very much.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for the organization and very nice presentation by the colleague. Now I will try to share my presentation. Serdar abi, is it okay? Everyone can see it? Can you see the screen?
Yes, Özge, you can go on.
Okay. Nice to meet you all. I would like to talk to you about our research project, which was funded by Nearest University and collaborated with University of Exeter. We did research on anthropogenic marine debris on the north coast of Cyprus. As you know, anthropogenic marine debris has recently become an important global subject for coastal and marine habitats. And many debris, after arriving to the sea, due to wind and tides and climatic conditions, they may come along the shores. And we see many waste along the shores, particularly in the Mediterranean region. And it is known that these debris are very harmful for the marine habitat, marine animals. And also it may come to humans. And there are lots of research about microplastics that it may come to humans. So it is a very important threat for the environment. And during our research project, which was 2 years research project, we assessed the marine litter along 8 different beaches in northern coast of Cyprus. 2 of them were in Akdeniz region, Aya Irini, and one was Güzelyalı Beach, Vasilia region, and Alagadi Beach. And we had couple of beaches in Karpaz and couple of beaches along Famagusta range. What we did, we carried out monthly surveys between January 2017 and January 2019. Any item we found less than 2.5 centimeter diameter, we collected them in this 250 square meters plot. And this was the setup plot, and every month we go the same plot and collect the items from the same plot, and we move them to the lab and identify them, categorize them, and weigh them. So during the project, we collected around 43,373 different items. And this was plastic items, and around 418 kilograms this was. And when we look at the graph, we categorize them into different groups. The highest amount was plastic. We did have some sanitary and medicinal waste, cloths, paper, wood, metal, some ceramics, and rubber. So different type of waste we have been collected. And according to our research, the highest amount of plastic litter was found at Romnas Beach along Karpaz region. And the most common plastic items were plastic pieces, like different type of pieces, and plastic bags, and plastic bottle tops. Lots of them, really lots of them. And in terms of a total mass, the three top items are, as we say, bags, plastic, drink bottles. And here you can see the mass and the item, number of items of each categorized litter group. So it is clearly, you can see that the highest one was plastic, and similar to the colleagues' findings. So while only 86 items were found were on non-Turkish origin labels, suggest the origins from Lebanon, Syria, Israel, and Egypt. And most of these items we found different origin was at Romnas Beach and also at Akdeniz Beach, Aya-İrili region. It is known that microplastic ingestion and entanglement by marine vertebrates has received worldwide attention, affecting almost all marine vertebrate taxa. So currently, it is very important subject, and many researchers carrying on research all over the world on this subject. And this can cause permanent physical damage or death of the animals, which a few years ago we had turtle sick turtle, and we've been looking after this turtle at our house. And after a few days, I was keeping it in our bathroom. Few days later, I found some plastic materials coming out of this animal in the bath. So, and also we had some dead turtles, and when we do the autopsy, we see some plastic materials coming out of the sea turtles. So this is a very important subject, and it should be further studied, I believe. And the ingestion of micro and nanoplastics is reported an event and wider spectrum of taxa, including many marine invertebrates. Okay. We just had one more participant to come. So understanding the social, ecological, ecosystem, and economic effects of marine litter, this will provide us with the necessary tools to mitigate against this escalating problem and reduce the numerous costly initiatives on which the NGOs or governments spend their limited sources for beach cleaning activities. So it is It is important, especially for Cyprus, because we are relying on our budget to tourism. So it should be priority subject for our country. And this picture is with Professor Brandon from Exeter University and Associate Professor Wayne Fuller from nearest university, and we were in this project, and we were discussing our results. And we believe that this research has the potential to inform marine debris policy across the Mediterranean region, highlighting the downstream impacts resulting from poor waste management both locally and in the region. Now that the baseline has been established, I mean, with all of our research data, ongoing efforts hold the potential to highlight changes in abundance and proportion of key categories of litter, and this should be undertaken as a priority action. That's what we are believing. So thank you so much. I tried to summarize it all. If you have any questions, I will be happy to reply. Thank you.
So another fantastic presentation. Thanks, Özge. Quite useful data again. I see that actually two of the studies are very complementary because time-wise and also geographically, two projects worked on different regions and different times, making it a kind of, let's say, a sort of uninterrupted study, giving us all the data to share and to analyze. I would like to ask people if they have some comments, some questions to our speakers. Here we go. Whoever would like to ask questions, please send it. So I'm leaving the floor now.
Good morning. It's Brendan here in England. Is it okay if I ask a question of the first speaker, please?
Yes.
Good morning. Yes.
Good morning. As pointed out, the two studies are quite complementary, but the results are quite different. And I wondered if you would understand why the results from your study were more different from those of Özge. Are your beaches more often cleaned, and so consequently the marine debris that builds up over a long time are actually cleaned away, and then what you're really looking at is what came from last weekend's messy visitors? Because actually a lot of Özge's beaches are very much more remote and don't have nearby infrastructure and toilets and hotels, etc.
Yeah, that's one reason. I think we would have to have a closer look at all the data, the protocol used, the actual locations cleaned to be able to answer that question 100%. But I believe that's the main reason. Yes, because most of the beaches that we cleaned sort of more regularly or throughout the project are either close to organized beaches or are organized beaches. So the municipality actually undertakes regular cleanups of them. So what we actually see is the persistent type of waste that stays there even after most of the bigger items might be removed mechanically most of the times by the municipality cleanup activities. So yeah, that's a very good point. Thank you for bringing that up. And actually, I think that's also quite concerning in the sense that even if we say that we clean the beach regularly and you know, we do our best to clean the beach. Actually, we don't. It's a lot of waste that's left behind, and it's small things that we'll probably never collect unless we actually go and do a cleanup. But that's, of course, that's not the purpose of the cleanup. We don't want to do that indefinitely. We want to find solutions for that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And in the chat, I added a link to a paper that I think is very influential and important by Nikki Beaumont, my colleague at Plymouth Marine Lab, which looks at the global ecological, social and economic impacts of marine plastic. Because I think people like, well, we've come from two different perspectives in these projects, one from environmental, ecological in OSGE, and then from your side, a kind of environmental engagement, you know, educational perspective. But I think sometimes the senior stakeholders and the people that might have their hands on the purse string might be more interested in the social and economic impacts of plastic. And I think these are stealthy impacts that don't necessarily get the publicity they deserve. If you actually went around Cyprus and worked out how much effort is being spent on keeping the beaches clean enough to have tourism and recreation on them without people being annoyed, I bet you'll find it's a massive cost. And if people knew that they were paying that cost, they would be more angry. Thank you very much. Great presentations. Nice way to start the day for us in England. It's only 9 o'clock. I'm on my first coffee.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for sharing that. I agree with what you said. And actually, I remember a study that I had read some time ago that was actually, it was a survey of sorts, and was asking people, okay, if you see this number of marine litter items on the beach, how likely are you to go? And the numbers were very small, like 2 or 3 per meter, and the people would be put off to returning to that beach. So I think, yeah, that's a very important point. There's just a message in the chat about future activities and upcoming events. That would be great. We would love to have all of you on board in our future events. We post all our events on our website, MarLitCy.eu, and on the Facebook page. And I don't know, Oscar, if you also have events that are open to the public, if you'd like to say how you share them.
Currently, we are working on our manuscript. Hopefully, it will be completed very soon. We are hoping to publish it in a high-ranked journal. As soon as it is published, I will share it with Serdar, and also he can share with the group, and also Asni Gabriel, so you can share with all the colleagues. We've been working on it 2 years now, so hopefully we will manage to complete it.
Are there any other questions?
I have another comment. I think the great that that both projects or both studies are using counting the litter items, but also getting estimates of weight, because I think it's, you know all those 11,000 fag butts could probably fit inside one fridge which floats in on the north coast of Cyprus. You know, so the magnitude of the environmental problem, I'm not to say it's great, but the actual plastic pieces probably makes up the biggest amount of mass. So I think it's really important to have mass as well as frequency, and use both. But I think also what would be really good is if in some kind of subsequent project there could be a workshop so that all the teams working in Cyprus, even if they have slightly different protocols, that they ensure that their data are gathered in such a way that they could be compared, and that you saw the two maps, they complemented each other, but what was shown were different units, and so that we could make sure that there were units that would allow a pan-island comparison to be made. Because I believe that that it's worse on the very north shore because of the oceanography. We actually, there's a young chap working on microplastics from Edinburgh University called Joseph. If the team would like to be put in touch with him, he's at Edinburgh University, but he's looking at microplastics all around the whole west and south and east coasts for his project this summer, and he's doing a complementary project to the one that we've done before on microplastics in the north, and it should really nicely show how it's different, how it varies across the island in different places. So I think aspiring to be able to put data sets together to give a true comparison unit by unit is really important. But unfortunately, OSGE uses one, OSPAR, and you use Ocean Conservancy, and usually they're more or less the same, and it wouldn't take much tweaking to make sure that the data sets are wholly comparable, and I think that's worth looking at. Just a comment, because it's coming up more and more in different places, and it's kind of frustrating when data sets can't be compared at the level of regions or internationally because the data sets haven't been considered.
Yes, noted. Thank you. Yeah, there are a lot of protocols out there, and I think different ones are useful for different purposes. There's the OSPRA one, there's the MSFD one, there's so many of them. But as you say, there are some common items and some common ways of presenting, or at least sort of common ways of presenting the marine litter items found. So yeah, thank you. Noted.
May I say something? May I say something?
Yes, go ahead.
What I would like to say that it's been now years that we cooperate active with Master, and of course, I think we should note here all this interesting data we collected through MarLit. The major issue, the major point is, or the thought behind it, is to show that marine litter or any other environmental problem on this island could be a tool for peace building. So it is, for me, it's important to do common publications to show that still there are people that believe in peace building on this island, and there are people that work for peace building and for living together. And I think this is a very important issue that we can draw as a conclusion out of all these efforts we've been doing. Because apart from collecting and analyzing data on marine litter, we have all these activities that Mitra presented, common beach cleanups, common seabed cleanups, common publications. These are very important parameters of MarLit, of the innovation of MarLit. Marine litter as a peace-building tool. And doing at the end of the day a common presentation with any kind of data that exists there, we can find the way to make them comparable, and we can do this, I think would be a great contribution towards this direction. Thank you.
Can I say something? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so for the future activities and future projects, maybe I am happy to collaborate with you guys. I just wanted to mention that. So after you complete your project, if you are willing to do further activities on this subject, We will be very happy to collaborate with you for the future and for the island. Thank you.
Thank you. As Serdar said, MarLitCy is a project that's full of activities, and we try to engage as many people as possible in them. But also individually as organizations, we also run complementary activities all the time because we understand the scale of the problem and we want to raise awareness as much as possible. And in September, Active will be running its second social media campaign on marine litter. It's called Potavristou, which means reach out in the Cypriot dialect, the Greek Cypriot dialect. And we would like people to just, anywhere they are really, to just send us a picture and collect the litter that's found around them and just send us through some numbers. And that's a huge opportunity to raise awareness. And we would invite everybody actually to participate and just show that we are united in numbers and in our common goal. So.
If there are any other comments or questions, do you have any other comments or questions? So, well, thank you, I guess, for joining us today in our webinar. It was a pleasure having you all here and receiving your comments and questions. Serdar, would you like to say something?
Yes, I can. I would like to thank everyone for their contributions. It was really, let's say, productive for us to get everybody's feedback and comments, which were all noted down. I would like to invite everybody to fill the questionnaires that we'll be sending to them, because while they were being registered, they filled a questionnaire about their perception on marine litter. And we will send the second one just to see the difference after this webinar, if there is a sort of change on their perception on marine litter. So I would like to invite everybody to fill and return those questionnaires back to us. Stay well, everybody. Stay safe. Until next time, good to meet everyone. And let's keep in touch. And see you soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.